Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar on building a great throws program with Coach Sean Foulkes from Portage Northern in the wonderful state of Michigan. The way this works is you'll be able to hear, I'm Dan McQuaid, I'm the host. You'll be able to hear my voice throughout. You'll be able to hear Sean's when we turn it over to Sean. Right now, you're seeing my computer screen. When we turn it over to Sean, you'll see his computer screen. And throughout his presentation, feel free to type in questions at any time, and I'll see those and I'll interrupt Sean and get him to answer your questions. A little info before we start. Thanks to MF Athletic for publicizing our webinars. That's a great place to go for any of your track and field needs. And the guy for the throws at MF is the extremely handsome Rob Lasorza. So if you need any kind of throwing equipment, Rob is an expert and a great friend to the throwing community. This is our fourth webinar. The previous three are available at mcthrows.com. That's our website. So if you go there, you'll be able to find those and find articles about throwing and all kinds of throwing related matters. Here's Sean, speaking of good looking dudes. Again, he's head throws coach at Portage Northern High School. He recently became certified at USATF Level 1. He's built a really interesting program at Portage. Sean is going to talk about in a minute how he built the program there, built up great numbers, often has 40 throwers. And then what's interesting to me then is once you get those throwers, the challenge is how do you train them properly and how do you manage them and turn out at least a few high quality throwers from that big batch. And Sean's going to talk about that too. So, Sean, I'm going to turn it over to you if you want to go ahead and grab the screen.
Okay.
And I'll interrupt you with questions.
Sounds good. Get to presentation view here. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, mcthrows.com and the Illinois Track and Cross Country Coaches Association for this opportunity. I really appreciate being here. As soon as the button works, because technology is always fun like that. All right, so I'd like to preface this by saying that with so many great throws coaches out here, a lot of stuff that we cover tonight, you might have already known from a previous experience, or you learned in a coaching clinic. And nothing that I say here is the be-all, end-all. This is just kind of how we've built our program here and the direction that we're trying to take it in. And I hope that there's a few things out here that help you and your programs be able to thrive. So just a quick background on me. I know Dan already did a little something here, but I was a 4-year varsity athlete in high school. I did pretty well when I was in there. And then as a coach, I'm a USATF Level 1 coach. And I've been coaching for about 10 years or so at various levels of track in Michigan. And my current position is the head throws coach at Portage Northern High School, which also has ties into our middle school program as well. So a lot of what we do in our program is built around this idea of protecting the house. I know a lot of football programs use a similar kind of idea, but it's this notion for us that when you come into our throwing areas, you're going to have to fight for every point that you want to get. Now, in order to be able to protect the house, you have to build the foundation. So some of the things that we've covered that have really made this program great, and we've really taken the time to kind of cultivate these things throughout the years, have been these key points that you see off to the side here that we're going to cover. This idea of no individuals, only the team, becoming a team within the team, streamlining instruction. This one has been huge for us in helping us be successful. The building blocks for your program. So we'll talk a little bit about, if you're a new coach, some of the things that you might need to think about in order to help your program get a little more steam a little bit faster. Being the Swiss Army knife, because any successful coach out there knows that it's not always the easiest road, and that sometimes you have to get a little creative. Theme of the practice or season. And this is kind of one thing I really like. I'm always a big fan of people that can tell a good story. And for me, having a story that your athletes can kind of build on throughout the whole course of the season really helps them connect everything they're doing in a workout to a bigger picture, which is something we want our athletes to be able to do when they leave our program. And then connecting our past, present, and future. It may sound somewhat silly, especially at a high school level, but for me, having an athlete in middle school be able to see the importance of someone who came through our program and is now off into, let's say, college athletics or professional athletics, or even just in the workforce, and having someone in the workforce be able to look back in the middle school level and say, I know the experiences this young person is going through, and I know what it's going to build for them. All right, so starting out here, we have this this notion of no individuals on the team. Now, for us, this really stemmed from the idea of all of these athletes wanted to, when I was coaching at Athens High School, they all wanted to be in charge. They all wanted to be the leader. And I started to write down these things that they had in common. And I found a list that was really kind of encompassing of it. They wanted power, they wanted achievement, and they wanted affiliation. So what we mean by these things is they wanted to be in charge for power. They wanted to be the captain, the team MVP, the leader, the one that had the highest marks. Achievement, they wanted to win the medals. They wanted to take first places. And affiliation, they wanted to be as successful as they possibly could with their peer group. So not necessarily winning all of the events, but having the respect of their friends and teammates. And when I looked at those things, I said, the most important thing for us is this idea that we need to think outside of ourselves. I love this quote. It says, if you want to go somewhere fast, go alone. If you want to go somewhere far, you go together. And that quote has really meant a lot in what shaped my coaching philosophy. And so we brought this idea in and said, all right, what is it the teams need? And as you see over here on the side, they need certainty, variety, significance, connection, growth, and contribution. So with certainty, they want to know that you as a coach are going to be there, that you are going to be a constant, whether it's how you dole out discipline or give instruction or how you support them. They want to know that it's not going to be the same thing every time. So you need to be able to mix it up a little bit and give them a little bit of variety. Maybe instead of an easy day of lifting and drills, maybe you make it a fun day. And one of the ways we've done that in the past, and I always have athletes clamoring for it, is this idea of throwers golf. So you split your athletes up into different groups, and you use your discs as drivers, and you use your shots as kind of your wedges and your putters, and you try and hit different cones throughout your throwing area. It is a little bit interesting, but if you have a big enough field, you can start them off on different sides, and it works out pretty well. It gives them something kind of fun to connect everything with. And especially when you think of the idea that we want to throw towards a target. I mean, not every athlete is going to be able to put it down the middle, but if we make it so that you have to keep lining yourself up and throwing it towards this cone, maybe they get a little bit better about where they're putting the discus or where they're pushing the shot to. So little things like that help give them some training and still make it be fun. They want to know that that what they've done matters. And so one of the things we talk about is, what mark are you going to leave in this program? What's your legacy going to be? When you leave this program, what are teams going to look back on and say? For our seniors last year, we had some really talented kids, including a kid that won a state title and an emerging elite New Balance title. And while those things are great, what's the impact that he left? When for that freshman that only got to experience 1 year with this athlete, what impact did he leave? And we'd like to think that it's hard work and that's a desire to succeed and do well. And for some of our young athletes, that's shown through in our fall conditioning. So it's really nice to make those connections. Speaking of connection, they want to know that they're a part of something bigger. That when I've got an eighth grader and a high schooler on the same practice field, that they're looking down the field the same way. That when one of our throwers graduates, they come back and they still feel a connection to the program. They don't feel like they're a stranger. I know several athletes, they come back to teams and they say, man, this doesn't look anything like the team when I was here. And I've had several athletes from our throwing program who come back and say, man, I miss this coach. I wish I was out there with him. Like this feels like nothing's changed. The faces may be different, but the feeling is still there. So they want to be able to connect to that. You know, we talk about growth with our athletes, and it shouldn't just be the numbers. Okay. It's not about how far we threw necessarily. It's about how we handle the stresses of training in life, how far we've come as a person. We measure our success very differently at times throughout the season. We want to know that while your lifting maxes have gone up and your throwing distances have gone up and maybe your sprint times have gone down, that maybe you're more mature. Maybe you're better at time management. Maybe you're more willing to give more of yourself to somebody who may not have as much. So we want to know that you as an individual, when you leave this program, are prepared with so many skills to be able to handle whatever life throws at you. And we found that athletes really connect to that more, because you're not just looking at this individual as a number or a stat. You're looking at them as something greater. You're looking at them as the future leaders and future parents who are going to have kids who want their kids to have experiences like this. So they want to know that there's that growth there. And then the contribution, we want our athletes to know that, again, I keep bringing back lasting impact and, you know, connecting everything. But we want to know that they had a contribution to this program. So one of the ways we've done this has been really unique in that each year we have our senior athletes write a farewell letter. And we don't read it to the remaining athletes that year. We take the letter and then we read through it and we pull pieces out for future teams when they need a little bit of encouragement, when they need a little something to connect to. And as student athletes go on and move away from your program, and they go off to live their lives, what they have to say may just be, or maybe just as important now as it is 20 or 30 years from now, but you might not be able to get a hold of them. So we want to make sure that they have that ability to be able to still contribute something that's greater. You know, there are a lot of pros and cons that go with this. We talk about the goods and bad things that can come from looking at an individual versus a team. When we look off the side here, it talks about, you know, as an individual, yeah, you can go at your own pace. You can get those faster results and maybe work a little bit harder on the technical, and you get the credit. The funny thing about that, though, is while a lot of athletes say they want the credit when things go poorly, at least when they're beginning, they want to blame someone else. And I see it a lot at the middle school level because our program is combined with middle and high school. And it's this very interesting idea that a student athlete has to think of, well, wow, this negative thing happened because of me too. I just want to hear about the good. It's like we want everything to be, as Matthew McConaughey would say, all right, all right, all right. And it's not always the case. So, yes, if you fail, it's on you. And sometimes when you're training alone, it is harder to find that motivation to get there. I mean, I have athletes that come in for fall conditioning where we're just doing non-sport specific movements. We're doing some lifting and some speed work and some agility work. And when you only have one kid there, they kind of look around and say, wow, what am I doing here? I mean, we were a team in the spring and I'm the only one here now. You know, it's tough. And it can become stale because you feel like you're doing the same thing over and over. But you look at what can happen when you make it a team concept and make it more of a family. You get more views, more people looking at a problem, which can lead to improved productivity. And yes, more views can help problem solve. And I know some coaches will be out there saying, well, you have a lot of people saying a lot of different things. There are a lot of things that can go wrong. It's true, there are. But if you initiate that dialogue, if you say, okay, well, what's your idea? What's your idea? What's your idea? All right, well, what are the good points of those ideas? What are the bad points of those ideas? And what is it that we need to work on now? You can help out 3 people as opposed to helping out just one. And so now everyone's growing, everyone's getting better. It's easier to motivate. When you're down there and you're trying to get that last rep in, it can seem like the weight of the world is on that bar. But when you've got someone that's right there with you, that's screaming at you, come on, you got this, let's go. Like, we're in this together. You're not just doing it for you anymore. You're doing it for someone else. You know, you think about stories of individuals with terrific strength, like the mother that lifted a car off a baby. I mean, you know, this idea that when we need it, we have this strength. Well, would that person have had that strength if someone else wasn't in dire need? You know, they had that because someone else was there. When you work together, you can accomplish more like that. It also improves our communication and the experience the kids have. Some of these kids come from various walks of life, and after they graduate from high school, will go off into those different paths. But having this place where they can come together and communicate, which in today's digital age, communication is key. You need to have that face-to-face interaction. You need to have individuals that are willing to talk to each other and share something that isn't a megapixel or isn't a text message. It needs to be the verbal. You need to have the emotion behind it. I mean, I look at the 2 pictures that you see here on the screen. The top picture was from our very first meet when I was here at Portage Northern. And you see our girls here in orange and our guys are kind of here in brown and orange on the right-hand side. And nobody really looks like they're together. No one looks like they're part of something bigger. But then you fast forward a little bit and you look at the picture on the bottom, and these throwers helped bring home 2 trophies from an invite. And it's because we had changed the way we thought about this. We had gone from, I don't want to be just successful, I want my next person to be successful. You know, it's more important. It's not just about me anymore. We talk about how our points break down. So for our program, we have 125 athletes on our track team at the high school level. Now, we're a Division I in Michigan at the high school level, and we have about 40 throwers. These throwers are great, but when you have teams this size, we only have 4 athletes at a time at the varsity level. And then everyone else has to be JV. So if you're a JV athlete and you outthrow everyone in varsity, it doesn't count, at least in our conference. You're off in the JV section. So for us, it goes 5, 3, 2, 1. So if I've got the top person winning the event, that's great. But if the next 3 places go to my opponent, we've lost the event and we're down a point. And now we haven't helped our team get closer to winning the meet. And so we said we need to be the best team that we can be to score as many points as we can as a group. Because our points set the tone for the rest of the meet. Throws start everything off. So we want to set the tone for the meet that we're going to get out ahead in points. That way, if something happens, we've made some ground and we have some to give back if we need to. Yes, with groups, you're going to have more conflicts and you're going to need more meetings to take place. When you have conflicts, stomp them out. You say, nope, you, come here. We're going to talk about this right now. We're going to squash this. It's going to be done. We're going to move on. And if it's going to carry on and persist, then this just isn't going to work. And you're going to have to find another team to go to. I mean, with this many throwers, it's hard to say, well, we're going to take this much time to work on this problem. No, like we have things we need to do, and we want to help these athletes, but these individuals need to realize that when you're here, you need to check problems at the door. And that may sound cold, but we want you coming in and thinking of this place as a place where you work, as a place where you can escape into, and find some comfort in the bonds that you've created here. We want you to be able to look at your teammate and know that whatever they're going through, they're right here in this moment with you. And that really can mean a lot for an individual. And so this idea of becoming the team within the team, it really stemmed when I was at Lawton High School. Lawton was a really amazing experience for me. It was the first coaching position I'd had away from my alma mater of Athens. And when I got to the program, the event areas were very split. Our head coach, Nikki Lykin, great head coach, has done an amazing job with the program there. They've had lots of success. She had a multi-events background, so she was coaching distance and jumps. We had a vaults coach, we had a sprints coach, and we had a throws coach. And everyone kind of had their own little areas and were doing their own little thing. Well, for throws, we were behind the home grandstands, and we were up a little bit above the rest of the field, but we were kind of off in our own area. I mean, most of the time we didn't see the other team unless it was a meet or they were leaving the field from practice. So this idea of, you know what, we're kind of off in our own world. We need to be our own team, and we can have our successes and we can be successful, but the meet for us has to be these two events, and every point matters. And so over the course of a couple of years, we had these expectations of, we need to build this identity. Who are we? And we took some individuals who had some success and some who'd been struggling, and we became not just this group that was out in no man's land, we became the tempo setters of the meet. And we wanted everything to be up tempo. We wanted to be loud. We wanted to be boisterous. We wanted to bring some things in from other sports. We started doing a team breakdown. And so whenever we get to a meet, we go through our warm up as a team, then we come through and we do a team breakdown, and we got fired up and we go off and we go and compete. And we had a lot of success, which was great. I mean, our team helped bring home, over the course of the 2 years I was there, we brought home 2 regional titles, one for the guys, one for the girls. We brought home 3 conference championships and a runner-up, I believe. And as you can see in the stat right here, in our 1 regional title for the guys and the girls, we had 1-3 in disc, 3-7 in shot, 6-9 in boys disc, and 9 in boys shot. I mean, it was a really strong performance. And we had some other very strong programs, but we had kind of come out of nowhere because we would have one athlete that was really good, and not a lot of people were thinking of it as, no, we need to climb this mountain together. We need to prove something to ourselves. We need to say that we are more than just these 2 events. We are bigger than it. So we set our own standards. We had, if you are 5 minutes early to practice, you're late. If you're 10 minutes early, you're on time. If you are using any language that I deem unfitting for the program, whether it's in practice or in competition or just in passing on the street, our team's running. We're going to find some kind of punishment that's going to be befitting of it. And, you know, I say we're going to run, but I like running. I like our athletes being quick and fast. So I don't like using running as a punishment. I like long holding of weights. So if you're doing box squats or wall sits and you're doing it for long periods of time, athletes tend to get the message that you mean business. But then you need this, you want to bring this idea to other people. You want to bring other people up. So once we created this identity, we said, you know what, who else can we bring in? And so we started to look at how our program was built. And at Lawton, baseball and softball were big. And so we had some kids that would duel. And we said, all right, well, some kids are dueling there, and we have kids who are doing this, and it's nice, but what more can we do? Well, here would be this middle school program that would come up, and I said, you know what? If we're going to help them out, you know, let's have some of our throwers come over here and give them a hand. And some of the kids at the time, they didn't know the same terminology we did. And I said, you know what? Well, let's teach them a couple things. Let's help out. And then light bulb. So these are your future throwers. These are the kids that are right here side by side your kids. Why not make them involved? Why not make them feel a part of this? Because there was easily a social wall put up between middle school and high school kids. And anybody that's gone through middle and high school knows this. It's you're an eighth grader. Oh my God, they're a freshman. You've gotten away from the numbers, and now you are a class. You're the freshman class and the sophomore class. And there was a bit of a stigma for some of the middle school kids compared to the high school kids. So we said, you know what? No more. No more classes, no more grades. You are a thrower in this program. And that was a notion that really kind of stuck for a couple kids, and some of them went on and had a lot of success. In fact, we had a girl, you can see down at the bottom, I'm having a conversation with at a meet, Cassandra Willis. She would go on to break the school shot and disc record just a year or so after I had left the program. But she was one of those leaders that really helped bring people together and bring these middle schoolers up. And so they had a lot of success from that. So building on that, we got to Lawton. From Lawton, I got to Portage Northern. And when I was at Northern, I was like, all right, I've got my formula. I think I know what I'm doing now. I say, well, how many kids do I have to work with? And our head coach, as you can see in his top picture, Aaron Kaler, fantastic head coach. He's like, well, we got about 120 to 150 kids out for the program. And my jaw hit the floor. I said, holy cow, that's huge. I mean, I came from a high school where 40 kids was big, but 150 kids on your program, I just couldn't fathom it. He's like, yeah, and we have this great facility here that you can see in these photos on the left called the Dog House, our auxiliary gym. It's 3 basketball courts wide with a running track up top. And I'm sitting here and I'm saying, my, like this is a thrower's paradise. This is great. And then I looked to our throwers. And at the time when I came in, we had maybe 5 or 6 throwers. I was like, wait a minute. How do we go from 150 athletes to like 5 or 6 throwers? And they'd had a great throws coach before I left, Shelby Cummings. She was a thrower at Purdue when she was in her heyday. So excellent coach. Did a great job with the kids that were there. And a few of these kids came back. And I said, all right, well, let's see what's going on. Well, when I arrived, here were 2 other gentlemen who were also coaching. And so I think there was a little bit of confusion from some of the athletes as to what direction this program for throws was going to go into. And we sat down, and one of the gentlemen ended up taking a position with a company that he couldn't pass up, and we wished him well. And our other coach, Gary Vanderweel, a former Western Michigan football player and track and field thrower from his high school days, he and I connected, and we said, all right, well, let's see what our strengths are. And I'll be the first to admit that mine weren't always strength and conditioning, but his were. And his weren't always technique, but mine was. And so we said, okay, we're gonna kind of split this up. And we said, we want to make a successful program. You know this aspect, I know this aspect. We're gonna split our time. We said, okay, let's do that. But we need to still become this team within the team. So we're going to talk to everybody. Anybody that looks a little bit too big to be a sprinter or looks a little bit too big for the pole vault pole, we're talking to everybody. And through word of mouth, a bunch of kids came back. Some kids who had taken a year or so off the previous year came back. And from that picture up top, we wound up with the picture on the bottom left. And we had this group. And we said, okay, this is a little bit more like it. We can do something here. Now, when you have 20, 30 throwers, it's difficult to find that time to really hash out what's going on. So we say, all right, we're going to do all these drills together. And when you have a team that's as varied as your school is, because it's a big high school, you get a lot of different personalities, and you get a lot of different backgrounds. And so becoming this team within the team became a little bit harder because you automatically had these cliques. And so we said, nope, we're done. Like, you're not partnered up with your buddy, you're partnered up with this person, and you're partnered up with that person. We had to make people a little more accountable for it. So when it came time to this program, we said, all right,
what are these groups that are going to be the leaders? Who are we looking for? Because that first year I said, all right, we have these couple people that we want to be our throws captains, and they can help be the tempo makers. But we don't want to look just for this year. We want to look 4 years down. Which of these freshmen are going to be the ones that are going to be the people in charge then? Because we need these people to be in all these different groups to help bring them all together so we can plant these seeds for the future. And so from this group here on the bottom left, we got this group in the middle right. And this was our senior class from last year. Admittedly, we didn't have a whole lot of girls when we first started with the program. Now we're actually at about 50-50 with our girls and guys. So we're about 15 to 20 girls and 15 to 20 guys that should be on the program this year for the high school level, which is phenomenal. And our girls are extremely fired up this year. But it's this idea that it all stemmed from a couple girls back then to one girl to now 15 to 20 girls. So these lasting impacts and eliminating those cliques really helped because it set the groundwork for all this. And because of this, we went from large group to smaller group to smaller group. And then we could spend some time focusing with a lot of these kids on the individual aspects. Like our thrower up here in the top right, Jas Paul Singh. He had more of a basketball background. He loved basketball. He always wanted to go out for basketball. And that was his sport. I mean, I don't think we could really tear him away from the hardwood for 5 minutes at one point. And he came out and he wanted to do throwing, and he was doing well. And he comes to me one day. He's like, Coach, you see what happened was I had this ankle injury or this. It was always something, but he kept coming back. And so he became one of these great leaders for this group because we said, you know what, no matter what happens, you're always coming back to us. Like this is what we want to see. And so it was constant. So some injuries plagued something, affected a little bit of the technique over the time, but from eliminating those cliques and starting to pull people from basketball and now pulling some people from this football group and this wrestling group, it made it a lot easier. I mean, what made it the easiest was probably being at the middle school level, because I work at Portage North Middle, which is directly next to the high school. So I'm seeing 600 kids in a day that are going to come on over to the high school and be my athletes for 4 years. So I say, all right, let's get these kids in here. Let's eliminate the cliques at this level too, because there were some. And for our middle school program, every kid has to run, do one running event and 2 field events, or 2 running events and 1 field event, or some combination. And so we say, all right, we know that you're going to be a sprinter in the future. We know you're going to be a jumper in the future, but we know you guys are going to be throwers. And so while we want all of our throwers to join in this group, we have this idea that we know this group is going to be the ones that are going to really need to feed into this program. So we like to give them a lot of exposure.
Hey, Sean, quick question. When you're trying to build those numbers, was there any difference in your approach to getting girls to come out as opposed to getting boys to come out?
You know, there was. A lot of what we've seen in the past from girls athletics for throws versus guys throwers has been the idea of body image. And so at first, when we were trying to recruit girls to throw, the notion was, well, I'm not fat. I'm not heavy set. I can do things. And we're like, that's fantastic. We want you to do things. I mean, we want you to come out here and run fast and be powerful. Like, but I'm not fat. It's like, you don't have to be. That's the great thing about it. And so we had some issues at the first because, you know, it's hard to sell that, right? Because when you're in middle school and high school, it's all about image and this idea of, well, if someone sees me doing something, that must mean I'm that for the rest of my high school career. It's like, well, we don't want that to be the case. So we said, all right, what are we going to do? So we teamed up with our middle school coaches. Our head track coach at the high school level is one of our middle school teachers. Our head cross country coach at the middle school level, or at the high school level, is one of our middle school teachers. Our middle school basketball coach also coaches middle school track. And so we started having all these coaching crossovers, and we said, all right, which of these kids are going to be the ones that need to prove something? So we started going into physical education classes and seeing which kids were powerful and athletic. We went to the basketball games and tryouts and said, which kids do we think can make an impact? Maybe they're not going to make it at the next level, but maybe they can find a home with us. Or maybe they'll do both. I mean, I love my athletes that do multiple school sports. I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love the opportunity to work with my athletes all year round to make them the best athletes possible. But at the end of the day, more sports means that I've got somebody else that's checking on their grades. I've got somebody else that's making sure that they're keeping their nose out of trouble. And I got somebody else that's setting the tempo for them. And they're conditioned. It's great. And so by going into these different female sports, I'm like, all right, volleyball players, basketball players, swimmers and divers, like, let's see what you got. So I would go to games, I'd go to tryouts, and I'd say, all right, which of these kids didn't make the team? Which of these kids did make the team? And, maybe they like the sport, but they want to try something new. It's like, all right, cool. Go talk to your friends. Go talk to your friends. And so we made a lot of our kids kind of that agent of change, because at that middle and high school level, the adults aren't the ones that they trust the most. It's their peers. I mean, they don't trust us until they get beyond the point where they realized, oh, maybe coach knew something. And so we come back to this idea of, all right, you want this program to be successful as an athlete. Bring the people into us. So we recruited our kids to be our recruiters. And we talk a little bit more about this later on in the presentation. But yeah, like the biggest thing for us was getting guys out wasn't hard. You go to basketball games, football games, and wrestling matches, and we could interest guys into it. Girls, it was about body image. And I said, you know what? Here's some successful throwers. Here's Sandra Perkovic. Here's Sophie Hitchin from Great Britain. And, I mean, these are female athletes who are doing amazing things. And by these middle school and high school standards, shouldn't be, because they're not fat. They're not the prototype of what they're looking for. But we don't want fat. We want athletes. And so we tell our kids, you know what? I want you to be the best person you can be. Be the best athlete. Be better than these other people. Okay? When you come over here, we don't have that label. You're not fat. You're not thin. You're not tall. You're not short. You're a thrower. And so by getting rid of a lot of that, we kind of built this place up where I think a lot of our throwers feel comfortable and feel more of a family unit. And yeah, in families, you're going to have some ups and downs and some issues, but it's helped us make that transition for a lot of these girls easier. And now, like this year, I've already had, I think, 6 or 7 girls in our middle school come up and say, hey, so what would I need to do to throw on high school next year? I'm like, well, a good start is by doing sports now in the middle school, and then coming out for track in the spring, and then coming out for track in high school and trying out for the sports in the fall. Connecting with our high school athletes. One of the biggest things I think we do, and this is kind of jumping the shark a little bit from later on in the presentation, is this idea that our middle school league meet happens at the end of the season, right before regionals. And so usually that practice right before regionals for our high schoolers, we take a lot of our top kids, guys and girls, and we go to the middle school league meet, and we wear our Northern colors. And we talk to kids and we say, hey, good job. You guys are doing great. We want to see you out here next year. And so things like that to really help them feel a part of something and feel like they have maybe a big sister on the team. Or I know a couple of our girls in the past have been kind of nicknamed like the team mom because they're looking out for everybody. They're great things because it built that family atmosphere where they could feel safe in. And I think that's been really important for getting more girls out to our program.
Sounds like your middle school connection
So
really
we talk
paid
about
off.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if any coach out there that's listening to this has the opportunity, I would connect with my middle school coach as soon as this got done. I'd say, you know what? We can do great things together. Let's talk. Because if you're showing interest in their program and you are having your kids come down and spend some time with these kids, they might not hear what your high school kids are saying, but they might sit there and say, wow, this kid was all state and he's talking to me. This conference champ wants to work with me. those might be things that stick with a kid. And those might be those memories that they're like, maybe someday I want to create that. We've had some really interesting experiences these last couple of years. We've had former athletes from our program come back, one of which was Andrew Evans, the Rio Olympian. He was a graduate from our high school, and he came back for a day and he threw some discs for at one of our practices. And here our high school kids were like, that's really far. But we had a group of middle school cross country runners come up and they were in awe of it. And so a few kids were like, I want to do that. I'm like, that's exactly what I want to hear. Yes. You want to do that. You want to throw far. Come this way. So that middle school connection has been fantastic. And
yeah, sounds like it.
Oh yeah. I mean, without the support of that amazing staff at Portage North Middle School, from our administrators to the athletic director to our teachers who are wonderful. And I know there are a lot of teachers who probably do great things out there for their programs in their schools, but I really think that we have some of the best teachers in the country right here at Portage North Middle. I mean, they inspire kids every day to do amazing things, whether it's in the arts and music or if it's in math or science. It's amazing the things that our kids get to do because of this support. And so they're getting the academics, they're getting the athletics. It's everything you want to hear from kids that are coming into your program. So we talk about this idea of streamlining instruction, working with these middle school programs. And you look at this picture up top, and it's actually one of our former athletes in the blue shirt and the bucket hat, coaching middle school. He liked throws so much, he ended up going on and being a coach himself. His name is Alex Wojowoda. Great kid, strong thrower, good leader. And he's like, you know what? I love throws. I want to do this. I'm like, great. Well, he coached at one of our local middle schools in Portage. And so we said, all right, here, whatever help you need, we'll help you. Because one of the things that we've kind of prided ourselves on is if there's a team or a school or a kid that wants help, we want to help you. And if it makes you better than us, I'm okay with it. Because at the end of the day, when our kids look up and realize, oh man, that kid can beat me now, they go right back in the gym the very next day and they're working harder to beat that kid now. So if your competition is always high, there's a great chance you're going to be successful no matter where you're at in the season. And so how we do this is we make sure that everybody is the same language. So our middle schoolers, our high schoolers will work the same drills using the same terminology, because when we get to that point from middle school all the way to a senior, we don't want to have that 10-minute conversation with a senior to say, well, here's why this didn't work and here's what you need to do. We just want to be able to look and say, in zero support, you were off balance. And when your foot came down in the block, you dropped your heel too early. And they just say, oh, okay, I got you. And they move on. We want them to have that functional understanding of what's going on in the throw, but we want to be able to use the terminology that they can quickly relate on. If they look over and they say, what happened? Say, you didn't hit the C. It's like, oh, gotcha. I know what I need to do now. And so for a lot of these kids coming in, the drills were inconsistent because you had kids that had different coaches or different wording. Once we streamlined it, we saw huge gains. I mean, our freshmen and sophomores right now are really the first group that's getting the biggest bang for their buck out of this. And we're seeing it. I've got probably 6 sophomore girls right now that will hopefully qualify for the regional and maybe do something going towards state in the discus. And I've got a freshman boy, well, he's now a sophomore, who was nationally ranked in the hammer because we coach kids in other events as well to get them interested. And it's just made it really, really nice when I can look at any of them and say one technical aspect and they all get it. And so this helped make sure that basic positioning was correct. So we said, all right, we need to make sure your foot placement is right. Get to the power position. Well, coach, what's that? Well, that's a good question, kids. What is the power position? So when you broke it down for this 8th grader, it's great. But when I have to retell it in front of this high schooler, maybe they're having an off day with their power position and they say, oh, maybe I'm not as far back as I should be. Or maybe I'm not stacking my weight over my power leg. or I'm not shifting my weight to a tall blocking leg. So it really made that that piece with understanding it and reaffirming it almost on a daily basis really strong for a lot of our throwers, and it's made them very technically sound, especially our top end ones. We also saw that with these groups that didn't have terminology and the same drills, there was no unity because kids were off doing their own thing. You know, this kid would shuffle or this kid would just chuck it. And you get to say, all right, no, we're gliding or we're rotating. And this is where we're at. And everyone, again, looks downfield towards the same goals. And because of this, it helps tie into this idea of the bigger picture here. And we tell our middle school kids, we're not looking at your success right now. We want you to be successful right now. And we'll do everything we can to help you be as successful as you can be right now. But right now isn't the end goal. We're looking at the end goal 6 years out. When you come in as a 7th grader, I'm looking at where you should be as a senior and what we need to do each year to try and get us to that goal. And so athletes will adapt, and they'll be a little bit hesitant towards changing what they're used to. But when you give them more of that structure, they're far more willing to listen because now it sounds like there's a plan. It comes back to this idea of certainty and knowing that you know what you're talking about, and they can see that there's that potential for growth there. So one of the ways we do this is we make sure that kids drill, and we do a large variety of them. I'm a fan of doing different things with the drills. As you can see in our top left video here, this was our senior female thrower last year, Megan Cardwell. Don't know why it skipped ahead a little bit. There we go. See if this will work now. There we go. All she's doing is working the South African position using, and just keeps wanting to do that, doesn't it?
Technology.
Technology, right? Yeah. If you want a great story, talk to Dan about how long it took us to get this to work. I'll tell you that. But we like using different things that help athletes take the mind off of, do I use this arm to swing this or swing this? We like to get them using their core and using their feet. Sometimes you have such a large group, though, that you just need to work everything together, like in this video.
Open. Drive.
Jesus, how many kids are in that practice?
I think that practice we actually combined our middle school and high school for a day when it was snowing here in beautiful April of Michigan. I think we had about 60.
Holy cow. And they're all doing the same drill right there.
Yeah. So how we do this is we worked in this video, we work a 4-position, I should say a 4Q power position, just to get them kind of slowly used to the different pieces of it. So our cues were pivot and turn the power foot towards the direction of the throw and create some torque in the abdomen. It was open by swinging the arm that's blocking out towards the direction of the throw. Drive, you would drive off of your power leg onto a tall blocking leg, and you would tuck your blocking arm in close to your body to help create more speed to accelerate your throwing side. And then we would say throw or drive or strike. And in this video, our emphasis after watching the kids do it for a while wasn't bad, but a lot of our kids, and maybe some coaches out there have experienced this too. Some people like to grunt, some don't when it comes to throws. And so we had a lot of kids who we said, you know what, you just need to yell one out. I just want to see you go out there and throw one and be loud, be proud, be aggressive with it. And so we said, if you guys don't all yell, we're going to do push-ups and sit-ups for the rest of practice. and I'll tell you this, while it sounds a little cruel and a little cold, if there's anything you can take away from this, self-preservation is a coach's greatest tool. And what I mean by this is if you tell an athlete, all right, I need you to do this, maybe they do it, maybe they don't. If you say, okay, if you don't accomplish this, the rest of your team is going to have to deal with what comes next. Well, now you have this one individual looking at the rest of the team saying, oh my God, like it's all on me as to whether or not they're going to be happy or upset. And some people have looked at me and said, you know what? I don't know if that's the best idea. I was like, well, here's the deal. I want them to be mentally tough. I want them to be able to know that when it matters in a meet, when their teammates are counting on them, whether it's a dual meet, a conference meet, a regional, a state championship, if their teammates are counting on them to do something, they're mentally tough enough to be able to do it. And a lot of times, especially in our technical work, if you say, all right, if you don't get this foot down right in this one spot, the group's going to do 50 push-ups. 9 out of 10 times, that kid's going to hit that spot, and they're going to be a little bit faster and a little bit better than even you thought they would be. And so you sit there and you're like, huh, that's not bad. And so you got to use it sparingly, but it's one of these nice little things where you say, all right, self-preservation is going to save all. Like we've done a drill where a kid kept falling to their right-handed discus throwers coming through the ring, and they'd hit the power position, and they just couldn't do a non-reverse. And they keep falling over to their left after they would throw. So I took a table that's about hip height, and I put it right on that left side of the circle. And I said, all right, if you turn through it, you're going to hit that table. And sure enough, that athlete not only hit the power position and hit a nice standing block, they had about a 15-foot improvement on their PR. And so it's not always going to work out like that. You got to be prepared for that. This was an athlete I knew that could do this. And if it was a beginning athlete, never would have put the table there, would have put a cone or something. But as they get older, you make it a little bit more challenging. It makes them get a little more hyper-focused. So in this drill, when we said, all right, let's hear you grunt.
Open, drive, throw.
You hear 60 throwers grunting in a large gym, it's going to make some noise. And some kids surprised themselves, and some kids did really well. But every now and then you're going to have that need for the one-on-one time. Like our athlete in the top right corner, his name was Gabe Daniel. And this is an athlete that was strong on our team. He was as strong as Knox. Let's put it that way. I mean, you walked around, he was about this size when he was in middle school. I mean, staff would sit there and say, wow, he is a big kid. And he was powerful too. I mean, he went from throwing, I think maybe low to mid 30s his first year. And 2 years later, he's hitting almost 50 feet. And he was just lights out fast. But he's one that really needed more one-on-one instruction. So you take the time, you say, all right, what are we going to do? Well, let's give you that one-on-one base. And we say, all right, let me see if I can get it here. There we go. So this athlete needs more one-on-one time. So we brought him into the classroom where we do some classroom instruction with our athletes and say, all right, let's walk through it. Let's see what you're doing. And because he got away from all of that sensory overload, he was able to focus a little bit more. And while this throw for him wasn't bad, it showed a few more technical things that we could work on. But he wasn't necessarily seeing that in a group of 60. He was just kind of focusing in on the smaller task of being loud.
Hey, so you bring up an interesting facet of organization. So you're dealing with these big groups, not always 60, I'm assuming.
Correct.
But then clearly it's not unusual for a kid to need a little one-on-one time. How do you do that in your practice? How do you manage that?
A lot of times what we'll do is we'll take our group and we'll split them up into smaller groups, and we'll work on different emphasis. Maybe this group is working on power positions and shot. Maybe this group is working on step and turns in the discus. And these groups, if you have, let's say we have our 40 throwers, maybe they're only groups of 8 throwers at a time. And we have 2 of those kids in the group are top end kids, are kids who are a lot more, I don't want to say accomplished, they're a lot more comfortable with hitting the correct positions and doing the movement patterns well. And so we let them lead the groups. And from that, we say, okay, we're going to start with our kids who have the least experience. We're going to build these freshmen, sophomores, or new kids to the sport. We're going to build them up first. And so we start working with them, and we handle it a little bit at a time. So between myself and our other throws coach, Gary Vanderweel, he and I will split off and we'll just work little groups at a time, and we'll kind of work our way around the room so that each of us get to work with every group and get to talk with these kids. And then at the end of a workout, or towards the end, we bring our top kids back who help lead the group, and we give them a little more time too, just so that they can get some more feedback. But one of the great things that we've done in the past is we've used apps like Huddle Technique, and we've used just video on phones. Say, all right, record these, send them to us. And then when we have time at the end of our day, we can sit there, watch them, make annotations, and talk about it. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on the Huddle Technique here in a minute. But it's one of those things that helps us save some time. Sometimes you're not even in the same place. Like, I was visiting family in Florida this past spring break with my beautiful wife and son, and I had athletes message me from Portage, and they're like, "Coach, it's raining, but we want to throw." And so I was like, "All right, well, let me see what you got." So we went on FaceTime, and I watched a couple throws. I'm like, "All right, well, record those, send them to me, and I'll send you feedback." And so we were able to email for about half hour or so, and back and forth. And at the end of it, we made some progress. It may not have been as good a progress as actually being there, but it's better than nothing. And sometimes for some kids who have busy schedules, or work gets in the way, or family events come up, you need that extra time. So we try and make ourselves readily accessible. And sometimes it can be a bit much. Sometimes it can be not enough. And that's just, you do the best you can. I mean, when I was in high school, I had our high school program had no throws coach. And so the only coach I had was my dad. And he would come down to the field with me, and we would spend hours on a weekend or even a summer day just going over drills after drills. And this is with VHS tape. So we'd come back, and we've already spent 3 or 4 hours. Now we're watching 3 or 4 hours of tape, looking for a good throw or two and trying to break things down. And while I always cherish those moments, it was times like that that made me appreciate having someone there to be able to talk about it with. I mean, my old man still comes to our meets and cheers on kids, and I can look at him and I'm like, "What do you think?" He's like, "Man, I don't know, that throw just looks off in the front." I'm like, "I know, I'm seeing it too." And so being able to have a coach there that can give you that extra time, that can give you that email or that Huddle Technique video and say, "Here's what I think we need to work on. Here's what's going on." Or giving them a technical model saying, "Hey, you have a form that's very similar to this thrower. Let me show you a video of them." You say, "Okay, now compare that to your throw on your phone." And you're like, "Wow, okay, this looks really, really similar." And again, I'm going to go through a few of those things as we get closer in the presentation, but you're going to see a really good example of two of our two throwers. One is a professional athlete and one is our high school kid. And while they're throwing different distances, technically she's closer than she thinks to making big improvements. But with these drills, we do a lot of different things. As it shows here, I do a 2-approach system. So we'll work our releases from the front of the back, from the front of the circle to the back. So it'll be like throws from both knees for shot, then throws from one knee, and then throws with feet facing the direction of the throw, and then throws with a quarter turn from the throw, and then half turns or wheels or step and turns, whatever terminology your program uses, and then South Africans or running throws, and then full throws. Well, for the technical aspect, we'll also work quarter turns, half turns, 3/4 turns from the back of the ring, and then we'll work wheels, and then we'll work power positions. So kids are getting a little bit on either end, and it helps them kind of connect everything in the middle. Because once they hit that middle piece, they're like, "Oh, well, this happens here, and this happens here. I get it now." And it doesn't always work as smoothly as that, but it gets kids closer on either end to the idea that you're looking for, as opposed to spending X amount of time on just the back half of the circle or X amount of time in just the front, and maybe losing out some of that time. As we said before, we like to maintain verbal cues through all of our drills, whether it's blocking arm, throwing arm, power position, pivot, drive, open throw. But the biggest thing for us, because you have right-hand and left-hand throwers, is we eliminate right-handed and left-handed completely from the program. We try and do everything as a throwing side, non-throwing side conversation. That way I can talk to the entire room and everyone should have an understanding of what we're talking about. Now, some kids, when they're in the middle school level or they're in the beginnings of their throwing careers at the high school level, it takes them a little bit of time to get used to it. But once they get the hang of it, excuse me, once they get the hang of it, it becomes second nature to them. I said, all right, well, your throwing side needs to do this. It's like, oh, gotcha. That works for the right-handed kid. It also works for the left-handed kid. And now my brain doesn't have to think, all right, if I do it this way or this way, because I'm a right-handed thrower, and I'll tell you, just like probably most right-handed coaches, they see a lefty come into their practice and they say, oh okay, give me a second here. Let me think about how this works. And it's reteaching it all over again. Well, you know the positions, you know the terminology. You just need a simpler platform to put it on. So we use throwing side and non-throwing side to help make that connection faster. As we said, with having so many throwers, we do lots of drill work, and we have large groups that will do multiple drills. Like here over onto the side, you can see just a bunch of our shot putters working on simple from the knee throws, just hitting good positions, trying to drive through the release. We have throwers working just simple flat level releases in discus. And this is one progression that we like to use. We like to use when we're teaching our throwers how to hold the discus and release it, because a lot of kids have the problem of worrying about the discus dropping out of their hands. So we say, all right, we're going to teach you 3 different ways. We're going to teach you how to throw it flat, like skipping a stone across water. Then we're going to have you try and throw it a little bit higher, still flat towards a target. And then we're going to have you lean your back just a little bit. So your arm is going to continue the same motion. But now, just because you've tilted your shoulders back and you've created more of a C position with your back and your legs, now you're going to add some loft to it. And you haven't changed anything with the arm necessarily. I mean, you've given it a greater orbit, but to the kid who's keeping everything straight and flat, it might not feel like that at first. They're like, oh, wow, that went higher. It's like, yes, we don't want you to necessarily scoop the discus. We want you to keep it nice and long away from your body. That 90 degrees away is a great angle to be at to help create a lot of force on the discus, especially out of a full throw. So we want to say, all right, if you can keep it flat here, like skipping a stone, you can keep it flat hitting a target out in front of you, and you can keep your arm flat as you tilt your shoulders back, you should be able to have some really big throws when we connect the pieces together. And, when we talk about release, you have to talk about bowling drills. Everybody loves bowling drills. And so when you've got, 40 kids, 60 kids, bowling drills are just a great way to be able to get everything started. And so we'll do 2 lines like this, and we'll have everyone line up and say, all right, get a partner. Everyone's going to do bowling drills. And maybe we have everyone line up on one line and say, all right, everyone's going to throw like they're skipping a stone, or everyone's going to throw straight, or everyone's going to throw on an arc. And you can get a lot of stuff done very quickly like that. Now, if you need to work, again, those finer points for shot, and you have a facility where you can do lots of throws into the wall, it's great. You have those visual reference points. You have people that are there pushing you. One thing that's been nice, though, is that when we've helped other schools in the past, we've done some videos and said, all right, here's how we do this drill, and here's why it's important.
All right, so the purpose of this drill is to work on the release of the discus. If you want to have the discus resting that last bone of your fingers, you go ahead and flick your wrist up like this into release. As you can see, see over here with our throwers, they're bowling the discus to their teammate.
And so we use things like that to really help, again, hammer home those points that we want to see every day. So everyone will have to do some bowling drills, some flicks. And until your release gets solid every time out there, we want to see you do them every single time. We want to see you have that base. When you're standing in line waiting to throw, we want to see you flip the discus up to yourself. And these just little reps that you don't think about. I tell kids, if you're going into the kitchen at home and you need to get a glass, maybe you do a wheel in the kitchen just to go ahead and grab the glass. Maybe you're stepping and pivoting into put your plate in the sink. It's little things that sound silly, and some coaches might scoff at them out there, but I tell you, there's nothing like getting an extra rep in, because somewhere someone is working harder than you are right now to be better than you. So if you get that extra rep in the kitchen or that extra rep walking down the hall to class, that's one more rep that you're getting that maybe they're not. And so we like to emphasize those things for our kids. Again, using the areas that we have, we do lots of different drills. We'll do lots of different emphasis. You want to work the whole group sometimes. And again, this is us working with a large group that we then split up into maybe half that size or a quarter of that size. You get those small groups like this one. We had a very small group here that we could just focus on the little things with. And it was just about getting the foot around into the power position quickly, and then getting the athletes used to pushing off their back leg. We don't want them to do it that much in the actual competition, but we want them to get used to actually using their power leg in the throw. So we say, all right, let's overemphasize it just a little bit. Maybe it's the first day of practice, like it was our first year here, and we're trying to get athletes into good positions, and we're just teaching them the basics. Use lines on the track. Most track and field teams have a track, so why not? You can use your fence at your throwing area and just do kicks to help work on a wide leg out of the back. Use med balls just to work some basics, and you can use them for good core strength. And the nice thing is, a lot of these videos were at the beginning of athletes' careers, and they ended up doing a lot better. We have the two girls on the bottom of our screen here, the one in the middle and the one on the right, Lexi Miller and Grace Cummings, respectively. Lexi's gone on to be a very big contributor for us in the discus and does very well with weight throw and hammer throw stuff in the winter and the summer. And then Grace Cummings is becoming a very strong discus thrower and is looking to have a really good year this year with shot, with rotation.
Hey, Sean, we got a quick question. We see kids throwing med balls. What other objects do you guys throw when you can't throw discs, actual discs or actual shots?
Well, a few of the other objects that we like to use are cones, because everyone has, for the most part, rubber cones. One thing that we'll do is we'll use tennis balls. I mean, you can usually go down to a local YMCA and get a bunch of old tennis balls that are just beat up, and they're going to hitch for a decent price or sometimes even free. And that's great, because you can take that tennis ball, throw it against the wall. It's usually not going to do much damage unless your kid is right next to a window. Which, again, I know it sounds like simple stuff here. Don't put the kid next to the window. You'd be surprised where kids find themselves with a tennis ball. But yeah, we'll use tennis balls. We'll use cones. We'll use med balls. I like power balls. So they're a med ball that has a handle built into them. If we're outside, anything that's got a little bit more weight to it. If we had old plates, like if you had an old lifting set and you wanted to take some old plates, you could. Our lifting sets at our high school, middle school, we don't touch any of those when we go outside, simply because we don't want to ruin them for other athletes that in other sports. But again, it's another idea. We also, along with med balls, sometimes we'll use weighted pipes or bowling pins. I like the idea of one thrower had once of putting a sandbag in a sock and using it almost like a discus training tool
just because they didn't have the discus training tool from MF Athletic necessarily, which I tell you, I've done a lot of throws coaching over the years and done a lot of like product getting. MF does great work, and Rob is great. So if you guys do need something, hint, hint, wink, wink, please go and see Rob. He'll hook you up.
Thank you for sneaking that in there, Sean.
I do what I can. I mean, I've ordered things from a lot of different companies. Rob's always been really good about knowing what throwers need. And he's always been one that I can trust. If I know I need something, I can call him and he can, usually help me find the right thing. But yeah, there's just so many different things you can use. Like you see the tires in there. One of the neatest things I found though, came from Ralph Neal over at Zeeland East High School. He has these Vallejo exercise balls, and they're kind of the same idea like a shot, but they're extremely soft shell. So they're like maybe a pound or 2 pounds, and they're really just pliable. And you could throw them anywhere, and they just kind of conform and they hit almost like a mini power ball, or not power ball, but slam ball. And you could throw those. Those are fantastic. I went to a clinic that his high school did last year, and he's going to be doing again this year. For anyone that wants to go to that, I'm sure he'll have more information. But he uses those in doing his discus demos and his shot demos, and it's just, you wouldn't imagine the feel that you get from hitting a good position, and it just goes and it lands and it's soft and everyone's good. I mean, it's fantastic. So I would definitely recommend. I think you found them on Amazon. And I think you can still find them on Amazon. They're great. They're Vallejo, Valeo, like exercise balls, I think is what they were called. Yeah, there's lots of different things that you can use. Those are just some of the ones that I think we predominantly use. There are certainly a few out there that I'd like to try. I definitely would like to get our kids a discus trainer. Sometimes we'll actually use throwing weights, like the 25-pound and 20-pound throwing weights, just as a little bit of something to mix it up. Because some of our kids also do weight throw here and there, so it's always nice to have a couple of those on hand. But yeah, we do a little bit of everything. We don't want to be too monotonous, and we want the kids to keep guessing, keep figuring things out. Strength and conditioning. So, as I said before, strength and conditioning was never my big point when I was first starting out, and I've gotten a lot better about it since. And Gary Vanderweel, our other throws coach, he's been a huge help, and he's really helped make our throws program what it is today because of the work that he's done planning and preparation. But for any coach out there, especially the new ones, there's these ideas of using the different cycles for the training year. There's a macro cycle, a mesocycle. When we look at our season, we definitely look at for a lot of our kids, they're on a 4-month macro cycle, and that's usually if you're doing a double, like maybe an indoor and outdoor, which a decent amount of our kids like to train for some of those things. So we usually have maybe 10 to 20 kids on an 8-month macro. Some of our kids, like our state champ last year, he was more on a 12-month, just because we were preparing to try and go to state and try to go to Midwest Media of Champs and Nationals. So we had some bigger things in mind. But for us, when we start practice, we'll usually do a nice warm-up, which consists of all these different plyometrics that you see here off to the left. And this has just come from lots of different strategies for warming up. I mean, when I was at Athens, we did static stretching. And when I was at Lawton, we did static and dynamic. And now that I'm at Northern, it's a lot of dynamic. And you go to USATF and there's the, let's be dynamic with it. And I said, that's exactly what we're doing. So, when your governing body for your sport says dynamic, you're like, okay, good to know. On the right track here. So we've used different areas in the past. So the picture at top is our high school weight room, and it's really served us very well in the past. But in the winter and fall, when we're trying to condition and get athletes some of that extra strength building, we don't always have access to it. Other sports are training and they're trying to get better every day themselves. And we don't want to take anything away from their experience. And also our rule for kids that are doing other sports, if I have a thrower that's playing football, I'm hardly having any contact with him at all. I want him to focus on the sport he's in, focus on his grades, focus on his family. And then whenever he's done, if he wants to come back or whenever he comes back, then we can talk. So it helps keeps, a little bit of that separation there for the athletes good. But the picture in the middle here is one of our high school athletes using our middle school weight room. And it's kind of nice to have that flexibility to say, all right, football is using the high school, we're going to the middle school. And while it's not as big and may not have as many weights, we can still get a lot of things done. And it gives these kids kind of the sense of, well, if I want to get to the high school weight room in the spring, I've got to earn it now. And so they work a little bit harder to get there. So as you can see in like one of our workouts here, just working around the room, all these kids are getting after it. They've got their stations. They're doing their work. It's an excellent atmosphere because everyone's looking downfield together. They all have the same idea. You need to get stronger because we want to win. You need to get stronger because I want to win. And it's like, well, no, not I. We want to win. And so everyone kind of reminds each other of that. One thing we do, though, for our strength and conditioning to help out, because I don't care who you are. I love push-ups. I love sit-ups. I think they're great for every thrower. But I think there's a really neat way of incorporating that into building your team. And so we do team push-ups and team sit-ups. Now, as opposed to having all of the individuals do maybe 10 or 50 push-ups, we do it a little bit like this. We set up everyone next to each other for the team sit-ups. And everybody has to come up together. My arm is around your shoulder, and my other arm is around this person's shoulder, and we all have to do a sit-up. And as we do it, we have to spell out a word, and then we have to shout at the end. And if the group can't spell it, or if the group fails to get everyone into that seated position by the time everyone's done, it doesn't count. And so you see some athletes who are stronger, some athletes who aren't as strong, and they say, okay, we need to figure this out. So you get kids working as a team. They're like, all right, you take this position and you take this position. And so instead of saying it's somebody's fault, they just say, you know what? We can solve this. So now we begin to get away from the blaming somebody for us not doing well. And that really emphasizes this idea that we are bigger than just this person or that person. And we're not as weak as one person could be. I mean, you always say you're only as strong as your weak link in the chain. Well, let's just have a really strong chain. Let's try and make the strongest chain we can and have all the links be equal, and we'll be right up there. We'll be good. Our team push-up is a little bit more grueling. So what an athlete will do, and we'll usually team them up so there'll be a girls line and a guys line, and each individual has to put their feet on the shoulders of the person behind them. So the only feet that are on the ground are the last person in the line, and everybody has their hands on the ground, and everybody comes up together. And unless everybody is up off the ground, the rep doesn't count. And so it's one of these things that's really grueling, and kids sit there and they say, no, just don't. But by the time they get done, they're like, wow, we did this. And when kids are struggling, you don't hear, come on, man, you've got to be kidding me. It's your fault. No. We sit here and they're like, come on, you got this. Come on, just hold yourself up there for like 2 seconds and we're done. And they really get into this. And what may struggle to even get one rep in the beginning of the year, which for us conditioning can usually lead into having them do 5 or 6 reps or even 10 reps come April or May, which is really impressive. And so, again, some of the different warm-ups that we've done the walking lunges, and we'll do we like doing them with a twist. I think it really helps. We'll do toe walks, and we'll do heel walks. There's our toes. We'll do the heel walks. Again, any athlete that has shin splints, toe walks, heel walks every night, every day definitely helps alleviate them. We learned that a long time ago with a lot of our runners. And I learned that from my high school coach. And just we had a team that was plagued with shin splints, did those every night, every day. And we didn't have shin splints for, I think, 2 or 3 years. It was great. Now I jumped the shark a little bit. There we go. We'll do a lot of our form stuff. So we'll do high knees for form and butt kicks for form. We'll do skips for height and skips for distance. Again, for form, for power. Because we want to be able to make sure that while we're doing these things strong and while we're doing them efficiently, we want to make sure we've got great technique in everything that we're trying to do. And so if an athlete doesn't do it well, we'll come back and we'll say, okay, this person didn't do it. The whole group didn't do it then, so the whole group does it again. And they say, all right, we got this. Let's go through. Let's do this. And then at some point in there, after we get done with all of our plyos, we come back and we'll hit our med ball work. And so we'll do different things with passing the med ball back and forth. We'll do, I don't know if I can get it here. It's hard to kind of click in on this one. This one was our med ball and throw. It's not letting me click it. It's just hard to get that one thing to work. Technology, right? But in this middle image, it would be our girl on the ground is doing pickpockets. So taking the med ball, putting it on either side of her, and then she's taking the ball, reversing her grip so her fingers are towards her chest, and she's pushing it out towards her teammate like she would be releasing the shot. Elbows high, flicking outward. And then our last one right here, our athlete does a sit-up where they reach the ball above their head, touch the ground, do a sit-up, and then they throw it to their teammate over their head. So between doing med ball work, plyo boxes, sometimes we'll do some speed work where we do quick sprints or we'll do speed ladders. When I was at Lawton, we could sometimes do sled pulls for some of our throwers. You can do farmer carries if you've got strong enough stuff. We'll do a lot of different things, try and mix it up, make it a little more interesting for the kids each time. We just don't want it to be stale for them. We want to keep challenging them, keep progressing them. Other things that we'll do is we'll go through resistance bands, help improve flexibility. So we'll take, we do a couple different resistance band things, and I learned a series of them from Bill Griffey. He is the former Western Michigan throws coach and current Bloomingdale High School throws coach. Taught me some of these resistance band stretches. So you do the chest, you could do over the shoulders. There was an entire series of ones for the legs. Just lots of things that athletes didn't normally think of when they thought, well, let's go in the weight room and get some stuff done. I'm like, all right, well, let's work our flexibility. And a lot of kids say, huh? It was actually our thrower, right? He first started doing these over-the-shoulder ones. He's like, oh, my God, like, this is great. My shoulders are finally feeling good. It's like, yeah, you lift weights all day, but you never work flexibility. And it's like, well, that's why you were kind of, stiff throwing last year.
Hey, Coach, can I ask you a quick question?
Absolutely.
How long does a typical practice last? And do you do conditioning or lifting and throwing drills and throwing on the same day?
All right. So we'll answer the first part. Our practices traditionally last about 2 hours. And that's from the time our team is supposed to meet and do our team meeting to the time we end our practice. Now, in the past, I've stayed a little bit longer, especially for some of our kids who were leading our groups. I've also usually had an opinion of, well, as long as I'm here and I'm able to be here, I'll help you. But when it's time for me to head out, then we're good. But it's always at least that 2 hour block. Now, as far as throwing and lifting on the same day, yes, like we will do that. I know there's some out there that believe you shouldn't throw and lift on the same day. There's some that believe you should. There's some that believe you need to alternate them. Here's our kind of feeling on that. We have, for a lot of these athletes, you're starting in March 14th, and some of them, their last meet might be May 12th. So you're getting 2 months. So if you're only getting them for 2 hours a day for a little less than 2 months because you got weekends that you're not doing necessarily a whole lot on, it's not a lot of time. And so we want to really optimize everything we're doing, and especially with our younger athletes, lay the groundwork for the future. Because our athletes that really enjoy this and really strive are the ones that do put in that extra time. So we would normally start with a practice. We do our warm-up, we do our lifting, and we work technical drills. And some days, if we think that we need to emphasize the technique, we'll do our warm-up, we'll do our technical drills, and we'll finish with lifting. This year and last year, we've been kind of in a funk because on days when the weather was nice and we could split the group up half and half could go throw and then half could lift, and then we would switch. Last 2 years, we've been in a construction period as we're getting a brand new track and field facility and football stadium and athletic complexes here at Portage Northern. And so our throwing area, or the area that we're using now to throw in, is a mile away from our school.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's across one of our main roads in Portage. So we sit here and we're like, all right, we need to figure out how this is going to work. And so some days, and those are, I do emphasize some, what we'll do is we'll say, okay, this group, or like our varsity kids, will come over here first and they'll throw. If it's the day before a meet, they'll get some throws in and they'll head out. Because usually these are our kids who are our juniors and seniors. They're able to drive and they can take themselves from the school, follow one of us over to the facility, and then they can head out from there. Our younger kids can go with another coach after they're done lifting, and we can escort them over there and make sure they get over to the facility, and then they can get more one-on-one time there. So again, this helps us break the groups up from the bigger and smaller and gives us a chance to work with them. But also the facility that we're using, which it's an elementary school, and our public schools area here, Portage Public Schools, was very gracious to have us be able to work at this elementary school because they poured some cement for us to have some rings, and they put up some cages for us that we could throw discus. And it's so big that we have a giant field to throw in. So if we need to send kids out in the field to do some drill work and throw, they can. If we want kids to work footwork in the ring, there's a huge blacktop here where kids can chalk out a circle and they can do work there. And then we still have the pads for the kids to throw on. So now these functional groups start to form, and we're like, all right, rotate the groups. And so it really helps us when we have all of our kids there be able to work everything through. And there are some days that we have the middle school kids come over with their throws coach and join our high school kids, and we've got 60 kids, but over this widespread area, it doesn't feel like it. And you can kind of seamlessly go from group to group a little bit easier. And so on days like that, when we have to travel that far, we'll try and have our kids, maybe everyone does the lifting first, or maybe we'll just focus on technique for that day if the meet is extremely important. If it's our JV kids, we do want to spend a little bit more time in the weight room with them. So maybe they'll do lifting and then drills there. But ideally, we want to be able to have all these kids see myself and Coach Vanderweel every day. We want them to be able to make those connections between their coaches and be able to do our thing. And it really comes back to this team within the team aspect, because none of our distance runners, none of our sprinters, none of our jumpers come over to this elementary school with us. Our distance kids can go run the streets near our school. Our sprinters and jumpers can go over to our crosstown rivals high school and they can do their workouts there. So we've really become our own faction last year and this year. And so it's really brought the throwers together more as a team, because they're like, all right, we're kind of getting our own little area. We have our own standard of how we need to get things done. And our leaders in the group have really stepped up and said, all right, no, coach, like, I think we should lift today. And if we don't have it in the plans, but we sit there and we're like, all right, well, why do you think it? Well, we've got this coming up. We've got this coming up. Every now and then we'll say, you know what? You're right. We'll do it. And there's some coaches that wouldn't necessarily do that. They'd say, you know what? Here's my plan. I'm going to do this, and this is how it's going to be done. But I like the idea of our athletes having some ownership over the program and having some voice in it. And so we give them that little bit of direction to do this. It allows our kids to really be able to feel like this is their program. And when we talk about lifting, if our throwers are doing a workout, this is a sample that one of our, as Coach Vanderweel in our picture here, again, has been the key to why our kids have been so successful in the weight room. This might be a sample of one of the weeks that our kids do if we're lifting on them on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday kind of thing. And we've got some percentages there. So if kids don't know their max, we'll do the max testing with them at some point, hopefully in the off season, and then prepare them going forward. And then we'll plug their numbers in here. They take their sheets, they fill out their numbers, and they just keep working on it. I will say, though, that everything that Coach V has done in our program has shown through in the results of our kids. Without his influence in our strength and conditioning program, we just wouldn't be where we're at. So if you're a coach out there that doesn't know as much in the strength and conditioning aspect, reach out to someone. Maybe it's a football coach. Maybe it's a wrestling coach. And I've extended invitations to coaches in the past from other sports to say, you know what, come and help out with my program, especially if you know something about strength and conditioning. And, this is before I met Coach V. I said, if you know something about this area that I don't, and you've had kids that come to the program with you, you can take them and do whatever you need to do for your season with them for like 10 minutes of the program. So if you bring over 2 or 3 kids and you want to work some stuff at the end, I'm okay with it. Go to it. So it gives them some investment too. So you get some other coaches on your athletic department that really want to help out as well. And again, there's a lot of things that you can consider with the programs for lifting. So you can do special strength, general strength. A lot of our special strength stuff, we like using heavyweight shots, and we'll use them more or less in the idea of slower glides, slower full rotations, just feeling through different positions, or emphasizing a good push in the power position. We'll use underweight implements if we are trying to work speed through the ring, and then we'll slowly build it back up into the competition weight. Again, these are just various things to consider when trying to build your lifting program for the throws. And we talked about planning the practice before. So essentially this is what you do: warm up, drills, lifts, speed, and connect your workout to this bigger picture. This for us is kind of a template of what we do. So in the start, we're conditioning, we're speed, strength, competitive. I want to see good technique. And so I want that speed and power piece to be a big factor. Championship phase, right in there, we want to taper off a little bit. So we're pushing ourselves right to about a week or so behind the meet. So we've got that time to rest and we should be sharp. But it's all about hitting those numbers. So for us, how our season works here in Michigan, we have a conference meet to qualify for, we have a regional to qualify for, and we have a state finals to qualify for. And so our conference meet for us, I think sometimes the standards are a little bit lower, but they're based on year averages. And we lost a couple schools from our conference. It used to be higher. It's 114 for guys disc, 89 for girls disc. It's like 30 or 31 for girls shot and 44, 45 for guys shot. And then regionals is 135 and 98. And then I think 47 and 33 roughly. And then state finals was usually around 145 and 112. And girls and guys and girls shot was about 50 feet and 36 for Division I. So we sit here and say, all right, we need to make sure our training and our lifting and our speed and our strength are all preparing us to hit these marks. because I don't want my season to end the beginning or middle of May. I want to end in June, July, or August. And that's kind of what we want those pieces to tie into. So when we're in that first practice in March, we say, you know what, it may be cold now, but it's going to be warm in June when you're still competing and your competition isn't. And some people can talk about, do you run a practice like a 2-minute drill or do you script it? I've done a little bit of both at times. I come in to practice some days with a plan. I'm like, all right, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to accomplish. And I finish and I say, man, we went really off topic today, but we made such progress. And so you have to balance that with the needs of your team. Do we need more time on the front of our circle in the throws today? Or do we need more time working speed ladders? So it really just depends as the season progresses, how your plan is going to evolve. Be flexible. Most coaches that can't change with how the athletes are performing or how the season's working have a difficult time adapting the farther they get in, and there becomes stress on the athletes, stress on the teammates and the parents, and stress inevitably on you as a coach. And you don't want that. You want to keep being flexible to help them realize this bigger picture. So when you're looking at a rolling schedule, and this kind of goes back to that timepiece, you're looking at, maybe a team meeting of 10 minutes, as you see here, 20 for your kind of your warm up, and then you can do your different lifts. And again, this is I'm shifting this group from lift and drills, this group to lift and drills, flip flop. And then in those last 10 to 30 minutes, when we're really doing some good throws, you want to take some time and put some kids in pressure situations. And so when we talk about competition style throws, we don't put one kid against another. We sit here and say, all right, give me a really good throw at like 75, 80%. Kid hits a good one. We put a cone down. Say, okay, you have 3 throws. Beat that mark. We say, okay, let's say they beat it on the first throw. We move the cone. Okay, you have 2 throws to beat that cone. And now you have 1 throw to beat that cone. And so we want them to keep battling back after a 2-hour practice when they're physically exhausted and maybe mentally taxed, to sit here and still have the mental strength and the ability to muster up the energy that they need to hit really big throws when it matters most. And a good example of this would be our state champ last year, Randy Prince, when he was at the New Balance Emerging Elite meet down in North Carolina last year. He and another competitor, based on what we saw on the video board, they were tied going into his last round throw. And I mean, they had both thrown over the meet record. The meet record had actually been broken like 2 or 3 times by this point. And so it's a 6-round throw. I'm sitting here and I'm like, I don't know. And one of the fellows I was talking to, Brian Woodbury, Coach Woodbury from Slingshot Throws out in Maine, he just kind of turned to me, he's like, watch this. And he had his camera out, and Randy was able to muster the strength and the energy, and he launched a lifetime best 178, broke the meet record again, and walked away with a W. If it hadn't been for some of those pressure style throws that we had done earlier on in his career, I don't know if that would have happened. And so we like the idea of athletes always having to have some kind of pressure on them at the end of practice that they get used to. So when the need comes, they can prepare for it. This next little bit talks about the building blocks. Again, this is more for new coaches. And it kind of breaks down the different areas of staff, facilities, equipment, athletes, schedule, and vision. These are just some different considerations that you might want to think of when you're starting out in a new program. Because at some point, coach long enough, you're probably going to go from one place to another. And so do you have enough event area staff, or do you need to learn something else? What are the experiences of your staff and your administrators and your teachers? Are they on your side? Maybe you're at a school that doesn't have the greatest support for track. Maybe you need to build that culture. If you don't have facilities, do you have at least somewhere that you can train in? Do you have enough equipment? Do you have any equipment? There's some places that maybe they get to a meet and you have to borrow an implement. Well, you better make friends quick. And throwers are usually pretty good about this, but
again, it's an idea that you sit here and say, wow, a throws program without an implement? Well, there are programs without tracks. There are programs without rings that go to parks. Look at Joe Kovacs from the Olympics in Penn State. He grew up throwing on a parking lot, and his mom was his coach. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily expect an Olympian to come from there, but why not? So you need to be prepared for things like that. Do you have anyone returning? Do you have athletes that are willing to step up and come into your program? Do you have, let's say you're at a school that has records that are kind of low. You sit here and say, all right, do you want to chase this record? Or you have records like ours here at Northern that's extremely high. Joey Sorrento set our school record here at 197 for discus. And I sit here and I'm like, oh, that's a nice toss. And so a lot of kids might sit there and look, well, that's really far out there. But you get one or two kids that say, you know what, I can take that down. Now you got someone bought in for a while. What's your schedule look like? Do you have to practice at different sites like we do? Do you have everyone separate out? Does everyone lift together or do warm-ups together? Or what's the coach's thought on your role in the program? Do you have squads that split? I know here in Michigan we have some teams that are big enough that the A team for varsity will go to this meet, the B team for varsity will go to this meet. So which team are you going with? And do you have enough support for even that venture? But in all of this, I think the biggest thing you need to look at is the vision. What culture do you want to bring? What standards and expectations do you want to set? Because at the end of the day, these kids are going to come to you. And if you're at the collegiate level, these young women and young men are going to come to you and say, hey, why am I here? What do you have to offer me that maybe someone else didn't? Okay. Are you going to set forth enough discipline that they're going to sit there and say, okay, he's serious. Like, this is legit. And are your goals big enough that people are going to want to do it? If your goal is to just win a dual meet, that's great. But there are a lot of kids that go out there and win dual meets. Do you want to be the team that wins a dual meet, or do you want to be the team that wins state? So having something out there that keeps them hungry. But there's also the idea of, what are you going to give back? What are you going to take and make with your program? We talk about facilities. You've got this is a comparison of our middle school and high school weight room. Clearly, you'd want to be in the high school weight room, but you make do with what you got. And our middle school has been fantastic. Our physical educators have been extremely kind and patient with us. And now, whenever we go in there, we clean that place up so well that when they come in the next day, they can start their power training classes without having to worry about a thing. So we're giving back to them. We do the same thing for the high school weight room. We want to make sure that we take care of the people that take care of us. If it's your throwing areas, the throwing area on our left is what we had 2 years ago before the construction started. What you have here on the right is pre-fencing for discus cages, but that's essentially what we have at our elementary school. And this is just the midpoint between what we have and what we're going to get. If we don't have the access to that big gym, we've been able to use our middle school gym and our middle school balcony area to do throws and to do speed work and agility training. So you really make do with what you have. Maybe you don't have these. Maybe you have hallways in a school. Maybe you have a wrestling room that's not being used in the spring and your wrestling coach is okay with it. Maybe you have something. There's always something. If you really needed to, find a curb outside and use it as a toe board. Find an area of blacktop and chalk down a circle. You got to be able to make do with what you got. This screen is kind of something we talked about a little bit earlier with using huddle technique and whatnot. The image that you see in the landscape view, that's our middle school auditorium. And so what we'll do is we'll bring athletes into here and we'll use our projector screen up onto the wall right here. And we'll do film sessions where we break down technique of professionals and collegians and high school athletes. And we say, all right, what do you kids see in this throw and that throw? What makes it great? What makes it bad? What would you fix? And so we get them critically thinking about it. And through a lot of this, we end up with a situation like this. This is Lexi Miller, and this is Mackenzie Warren. Mackenzie Warren is an amazing shot putter at the collegiate and pro level. And Lexi Miller is fighting for a spot on varsity. But because of our training and because we've hit some really good technical positions, she's getting closer. The video up at the top here, or the image up here at the top, this is the Huddle Technique app. And this is just a screenshot from it. But you can see a lot of the things that you can do. And there are a few apps like this. There's Coach's Eye, there's Huddle Technique. But I really love that you can take these images, put them side by side, look at the different aspects of it. And for this was Randy Prince. We highlighted a lot of things they need to work on. You know, he was leaned over too far, or he wasn't sweeping wide enough, or he wasn't getting the leg around fast enough, or the foot didn't pivot enough. But he could see these, and I could send him that video, and he could watch it over and over again. And as a coach, I get a notification if he watches it. If he watches it once or twice or 20 times. I mean, there's nothing cooler as a coach than sitting down at the end of a long practice and getting a message that says, hey, this kid is taking time to better themselves for your program because he or she cares enough to do that. And, you know, sometimes, like we talked about earlier with FaceTiming, this is it, one image right here. This is me working with Aaron Hostetler, one of our throwers we had a year or so ago. I couldn't make the practice, but we were able to FaceTime. So he'd go through positions. I'd tell him what he'd need to work on. He'd go back and he'd work on it. So you find a way or you make one. There's no easy path to success. So you have to be willing to be flexible and be able to do that. So this is the idea of you being that Swiss Army knife. You've got to be prepared for all things that comes, because there's going to be obstacles in your way, whether it's hurdles or space or equipment. Sometimes it's time. Do you have enough time to go from your job to coach and then back? Or do you have enough time for coaching this group or that group? You know, when you look at these pictures here, these rings right here, this was some of this like plumber tubing that we used. And Coach Vanderwill, he found the dimensions online, and we had that and like rubber cement, and we made makeshift rings. So it's something that the athletes can physically feel if they're stepping on, which is a great idea. Never would have thought of it. But that's why you go as a group as opposed to doing it alone. And we worked with kids on weight throw. We built our own weight throw balls out of slam balls and basketball nets and rope and duct tape. And you know what? It worked out pretty well. We had 2 kids in the top 5 of the state last year in weight throw, one of which was a freshman. And so you can find ways to be successful. You don't have, big storage bins or milk crates. Like this is a great storage rack down here. And if you want to, MadisonThrowsClub.com has a video on how to build this. There are resources out there. But if you don't have something like that, maybe you have old lockers lying around somewhere at a school that aren't being used, and you can store stuff in there. Maybe you do what we do, and you make a makeshift facility, even if it's just something to get you through. Okay? You have to be willing to work with what you have and to plan for the future and be prepared.